Hi, I'm Albert Pasaoa,
Hello, my name is Kevin Jefferies.
and this is the 635 Podcast. The 635 Podcast is about local politics, economics, and social and cultural issues in the Alvin Community College area. The views expressed on the show are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of Alvin Community College. All right, welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Kevin Jefferies, and I'm Albert Pasaoa, and the Texas primaries have just finished. And Kevin, tell us what the results are.
Well, Albert, we're going to be going through a page on the Texas Tribune site that goes through the statewide results. And I want to walk through that so we have an understanding of what did and didn't happen, who does not have to face the voters again, who does, because they're going to be runoffs in late May.
Can you give us a big picture, like?
Well,
your overall impression?
generally incumbents did well. And again, after we do this, let's look at how things happened in Brazoria County. We're going to be looking at a couple of the results for the Democrats and for the Republicans with Brazoria County. You want to start with the governor?
Let's start at the top. We're going to the Texas Tribune page.
Yes.
All right, let's check that out. They have a nice little graphic here.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead and walk us through this.
Well, as you know, there were a total, 12 different, a total of 8, it looks like, people running for the Republican nomination. We had some stories recently about Alan West and Don Huffines working together to try to, if not win, pull the governor off to the right. The governor did win a majority. Because remember, that's the idea. You have to win a majority in order to win the nomination of the state. If you win just a plurality, you have a runoff. West and Huffines were not able to force a runoff. But I think, I haven't double-checked this with previous figures, but this 66.4% of the vote is relatively low for an incumbent, somebody running for what would be his third term. And if we recall what sorts of things Abbott's been talking about, focusing on recently, West and Huffines may consider their candidacies to have been successful in the sense that Abbott had to, stake some positions further off to the right than he normally does. For example,
Did they debate at all in face-to-face?
No, they did not. West and Huffines, I don't think really debated. They had some appearances together, and I don't really think they thought the other was the opponent. They were both again trying to influence, if not beat. I don't think either of them really thought they had a reasonable chance of defeating Abbott, but again influencing the trajectory of the positions that he takes.
And in what way were they trying to influence?
Well, I mentioned a second ago that the governor had some proclamations on declaring any kind of transgender issues, parents that are assisting transgender kids, defining that as child abuse.
So social issues?
Primarily social issues, yes.
Nothing really related to, say, coronavirus regulations?
Oh, no.
No, that's all done.
Unless, remember, Abbott was driving force maybe, a year ago against mandated mask mandates, things like that. I don't think West and Huffines had any substantive disagreement with that. Maybe also they were considering Abbott not doing enough on the border. Of course, he had tried to push some of that himself with reallocating some funds from the Texas budget for building another, mile or two of border wall, whatever that ended up being. But he did have to respond to what they were discussing in order to make sure that he didn't lose the voters way off on the right.
I'm just kind of curious, big picture, how does Greg Abbott fit in terms of how conservative he is compared to other Republican governors?
I think he's considered to be one of the more conservative ones, so out to the right. Whatever conservative means, really.
Yeah,
that can vary a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think people will throw DeSantis, for example, out there as well too. None others are popping into my head right now. But if you want to look at the Democrats, Beto did win, and he won comfortably, 91.3% of the votes. What we haven't talked about is, and I think it was statewide, I believe it was 17% turnout. And I don't see the breakdown between Democrats and Republicans right here.
Oh, it just tells us overall the turnout, 17%?
Well, somewhere, if we dig into this, and my apologies for not having done it already, I know we're going to see the numbers for the Brazoria County, and it was, I think, something like 13% for the Republican primary and 4%, meaning that 13% of the people registered in Brazoria County went to vote in the Republican primary, and I think it was around 4 or 5% for the Democratic primary. But Beto did 91.3%, so it looks like Democrats are going to be unified around their candidate.
Well, he's got to have such huge name recognition, I guess, running
Yes.
as many times as he has.
Exactly. Exactly. Everybody knows who Beto is.
Is he running for, so aside from governor, is there anything else he has an eye on, you think?
I think right now he's probably focused on the governorship, I would imagine. Anyway, Attorney General's race is the one that everyone was watching because there were questions about whether Paxton again would clear the 50% threshold and become automatically the nominee for the November election, but he did not. He won 42.7% of the vote, and that's a plurality. He got more votes than anybody else, but George P. Bush got 22.8%, Eva Guzman 17.5%, and Louis Gohmert 17%. All of those three, by the way, are higher than what we would have looked at, I think a week ago. We were looking at some poll results. Paxton did about the same, but there was a significant number of individuals who hadn't made up their mind. And it seems like the people that didn't make up that did make up their minds, they broke in favor of Bush, Guzman, or Gohmert. So that's not good for Paxton. So, what he's going to try to avoid, and certainly what Bush is going to try to do, is to rally the Guzman and Gohmert voters behind Bush, and Paxton's going to try to make sure that doesn't happen. Because 42.7, again, that's a plurality out of this, but it falls short of majority. So if the non-Paxton vote wins, if they're able to consolidate and turn out to vote in the May runoff election, then he wins.
Does throwing support behind somebody play a role here? I mean, does Guzman saying, support Bush, does that matter? Is that a thing that happens at this level?
I think so, yes. I mean, I don't know the specifics about Guzman's supporters or Gohmert's supporters, but yes. And again, as I mentioned, sometimes it's not necessarily you like Guzman, or you like Bush, or you like Gohmert. You're worried about Paxton. Paxton, of course, has a lot of legal issues that he's dealing with, securities fraud investigation. He's been under indictment in Fort Worth for a long time, and there's just these procedural hurdles they've been able to put up to prevent this from going to trial. He actually had federal charges against him, too, and those were dropped about 3 years ago, I believe. And more recently, there was an exodus from his office. There was something like 6, 7, 8 high-ranking aides who think he took bribes, and so they left office as a result of it. He's denied the allegation, but it's still out there. And there's a question, too, about whether Paxton might potentially be vulnerable in the general election. Republicans have been winning state races after state races since the mid-1990s, and so they would like to keep that going forward. So, and he will, the winner of that will run against the winner of a runoff between Rochelle Garza and ex-Galveston mayor and grandson of Watergate attorney Leon Jaworski, Joe Jaworski. But Garza had 43.1% of the vote. Joe Jaworski narrowly by, it looks to me, less than about 400. No, a little bit more than 400 votes. Came in number 2. He had 196,000 votes statewide, and Garza had 432,000. So, whatever is the winner between the two goes on to the November election.
And how did Garza get so much support?
I can't really tell you. I think, let's see, what it says about her right here. Former lawyer for the American Civil Liberties Union from the Rio Grande Valley. So that would be where most of her support would have come. They don't have, oh yeah, they do. No, I'm sorry. I'm just going around through the map right now. With some of these, unfortunately not this, they show where the counties voted. So my assumption would be, without this in front of me, is that that's where the support primarily was. She was able to rally support in the valley. Rally in the valley. Lieutenant Governor, again, Dan Patrick, with the exception of Paxton, all the Republican incumbents were reelected, passed the threshold, got a majority, and so they are on the ballot for November, including the current Lieutenant Governor. Remember, Lieutenant Governor is the presiding officer of the Senate. meaning it's a very powerful position. Dan Patrick has expressed this, I think we've talked about this before, in making sure that legislation that has passed the House, also controlled by Republicans, that he doesn't care for, just dies. There's been more lenience in terms of the use of marijuana. I think there were also some avenues pursued in terms of casino gambling and things like that Patrick doesn't care for, and so he just made sure that it didn't go anywhere. And again, that's part of what you get to do with the way that Texas structures its government. The presiding officers in the House and in the Senate have tremendous power on what actually gets to the floor, what gets passed. He gets to appoint people to committees, he gets to appoint committee chairs, he gets to direct traffic, basically say what committees bills go to, so quite a powerful position. The Democrats, there is no majority, so Mike Collier, who was the previous nominee, will go against Michelle Beckley, both very low name recognition, so we'll see how that goes.
When was the last time there was a Democrat lieutenant governor?
I want to say Bob Bullock. I'm not going to commit to that until I actually research this, but I believe so. In fact, I'm pretty sure that it was. And who became lieutenant governor after him?
Was there a Republican governor at the time?
Yes. The Republican governor was George W. Bush.
That's so weird.
Well, it's the way things are in Texas. I mean, remember that Texas was a one-party Democratic state. Really, at all until the early 1960s, when you started to get a Republican organization in the state of Texas, and Republicans started winning isolated positions here and there, beginning in the 60s. Senator John Tower, who replaced Lyndon Johnson in the United States Senate. But we don't have this history of strong political parties. It's usually the individual. And Bullock is the individual who's argued to have figured out how to really take advantage of the power of the lieutenant governor. And I remember George W. Bush saying something that when he was elected, he was advised that he goes to visit Bullock to become friends with him because he was instrumental in furthering his agenda. And apparently they did become friendly.
Okay.
Agriculture Commissioner. This was another one people were looking at. And again, it's kind of a low visibility race. Sid Miller also has who's the incumbent, running for a third 4-year term, and that is highly unusual. That's what Dan Patrick and Paxton and Abbott are also doing the same sort of thing. It's like they've understood how to increase the power of their relative positions as well, simply by being there for a long time. Sid Miller's had different sorts of accusations and been involved, relationships with individuals who've had some ethical issues, and there was a sizable number of individuals who were unsure how they're going to vote. Those people seem to have broken in favor of Sid Miller, so he got 58% of the vote. There's your majority. And Susan Hayes, who I hate to say I'm not familiar with, 82% of the vote, and she is going to be the Democratic nominee. So those are your two opponents. Land Commissioner, very low name recognition as well, too. No one won outright, either with the Democrats or the Republicans, so they will be on the ballot for the runoff election in May. Dawn Buckingham versus Tim Wesley for the Republicans. Sandra Grace Martinez versus Jay Kleberg for Democrats. And remember that the job of the land commissioner is to oversee the 13 million acres of state land, administer disaster recovery funds. I think we had a story earlier on about the fact that they're still sitting on some money that Harris County argues is meant for them for relief from Hurricane Harvey, which is 5 years ago.
And did that create any waves in this land commissioner?
It doesn't appear to be. It's been a big deal with Harris County, obviously, that area, but it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that has gotten a lot of traction beyond that. What was the last one, too? Is that it? Comptroller. Again, very important, but low visibility position. Again, the position is basically tax collector, controller, the state treasurer, and also revenue estimator. And Glenn Hager's, again, held the position for, I guess this is his third 4-year term, 81%. So he's the high vote getter for the Republican side. And there's a runoff between Janet Dudding and, would it be Angel or Angel? Luis Vega, 46 and 34% of the vote, respectively.
I think I just now realized why they call it the comptroller. No one wants to be called the tax collector.
No. How about controller?
Yeah, I'm the comptroller.
I'm sure there is I'm sure there's background to that name. All right, another interesting one too. Railroad Commissioner. Now remember again, we have two elected executive organizations on the state level in the state of Texas. The one is the Railroad Commission, which is a three-person board which regulates the oil and gas industry, primarily the production of oil and gas, which is a way for Texas to try to maintain the price of a barrel of oil. Has an interesting history. Apparently, OPEC is based on the Railroad Commission, and originally it did regulate railroads, but it doesn't anymore. It was able, about 100 or so years ago, to switch over and start to regulate oil and gas, which means that the oil and gas industry is very much interested in who is there, and they very much support candidates. Wayne Christian is looking, and it's a three-person board. They serve overlapping 6-year terms. Mm-hmm. So this was Wayne Christian's time, and he did not get a majority. And he is going to run against Sarah Stogner. We may have talked about her. There's some...
Well, there's a sentence right here, right underneath the Railroad Commission. Let me read it. One seat is up for election in 2022, and a semi-nude video, corruption allegations, and a fatal crash roiled the GOP primary. Wow, that's exciting.
This is the most interesting of all the races, it seems like. Even something that has Don Huffines and Alan West with it. Yeah, apparently the story was that she was out with some people, oil people, and you know how crazy that can get.
Crazy
if you're familiar with
the oil
story,
guys, I'm hanging out with them.
Out in Midland, Odessa, something like that, and all of a sudden they decided to start taking some increasingly risque pictures on an oil pump. And the other thing is, Marvin Sarge Summers got 193,000 votes, which is great for a guy who died in a car crash 3 weeks ago.
Oh wow!
I mean, shame for him and his family, but he did at least get some votes. So Democrats, again, where is that? Oh, one person running, and so that avoids the runoff right there. State Board of Education, there's no necessary reason, I think, to go fully through all of these, but this is where you see the results for the individuals that represent each of the different 15 districts around the state of Texas. They all face the voters this time, as with the state Senate, because we just had redistricting. And after this, they're going to be divided into two different classes, and one will be given a 2-year term, which is followed by 2 4-year terms before the next redrawing of the districts, and then the others get 2 4-year terms followed by a 2-year term. The story here, apparently, and this is just something I ran across a little while ago, you do have some individuals who have been elected on the platform of anti-critical race theory. Mm-hmm. So maybe that is something that starts to become a little bit more topical with those races. And then after that, I suppose what would be interesting for us here, the judicial races. You have the 3 people up for re-election, 3 positions up for re-election in the Texas Supreme Court. Of the races there, a total of 6 different races, 3 Democrat, 3 Republican. Only one had a challenger. Also, Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, similar sort of story there as well, too. United States House of Representatives. Now, this is a little bit interesting, too, because this is the first time you have this particular map. And you have 38 different districts, 2 new ones. I don't have a count right in front of me. Let's see.
Which district are we looking at?
Well, we can just run through any of them, really. Currently, you have 23 Republicans and 13 Democrats. So we'll see what happens. These things have been redrawn. There's been gerrymandering going on. Partisan gerrymandering, the Supreme Court argued, was okay. So we'll see what this leads to in terms of the general election soon enough. Dan Crenshaw won again, District 2.
Wait, District 1 has no incumbent, right?
Well, District 1, let me go back up here real quick. House District 1. No, there is no incumbent there, okay. Correct. And that's one of the reasons why you have 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans. Yeah. Generally, the open seats are the ones that are especially competitive. Now, it is surprising that Crenshaw drew some opponents as well, too. Remember, he went off and denied that the election was stolen from Trump, from President Trump. Okay. And so I think that has kind of led to some animosity within the Republican Party. Now, here's an interesting story since the election. If you look at House District 3, Van Taylor, the incumbent, going on to a runoff with Keith Self, and apparently he has just resigned, admitted to an affair. Now, here is the question.
Who resigned?
Van Taylor, if you're looking at House District number 3, the
Oh,
Republican.
okay.
Yeah, he had 48%. According to this, that means that the number 2, is the nominee of the political party.
Wow.
So he, I suppose, there won't be a runoff, and so there's a
Got
one-person
lucky.
runoff. There you go.
Suzanne is very upset at. She looks like she was really close to him almost.
Oh, well. Now, one thing that's important to notice, too, as we go through this, and, if we went through all the Senate races, we would see this in the Texas Senate and Texas House races as well. One of the consequences of gerrymandering is that certain districts are going to be drawn specifically for a Republican or specifically for a Democrat. And as you can see in the case of House District 6, and I can't remember exactly where that is, there's no Democrat running. So they don't consider it, competitive enough to even try.
Wow.
And that's the case also with some Republicans as well too. Now, a redrawn House District 9 also touches into parts of northern Brazoria County. Al Green was the only candidate right there. He'll be running against Jimmy Leon. And if we scroll down to House District 14, we will see ACC alum Randy Weber, 89% of the vote. So he is the Republican nominee and will be running against Michael Williams in the November election. Scrolling down a little bit further, if we get to House District 22, that's the other district that touches into Brazoria County. Troy Neal's the incumbent, with 87.2% of the vote, is the nominee, and will be running against an unopposed Jamie K. Jordan. I love that name, Jamie K. Jordan. And again, to point out, if we scroll down a little bit further and we get to Districts 37 and 38, those are the 2 newly created ones. And this is also a good example of how these things are drawn in such a way that you get a particular member of a particular party, the competition being within the primary. Lloyd Doggett, who already is in Congress representing Congressional District 35, he was effectively drawn out of District 35. There's no national law saying that you have to live in the district you represent. It's just a good idea. But he is going to be the nominee for the Democrats for the newly created House District 37 and will be running, there's a runoff between Jenny Garcia Sharon and John Linkst, I guess it is right here, 46%, 46.8 versus 27.8%. Now, what I'd want to point out too, if you look at the number of the votes, Doggett gets 59,000, Donna Iman 13, and then, less than that afterwards. And then combined, you have 9,000, 5,000, and 4,000 votes, respectively, for the 3 Republican candidates. So a lot more Democrat votes than Republican votes there. And the opposite is the case in the other newly created district, which is in the western part of Harris County. I think it touches a little bit of Houston. I think it's like Katy, things like that, very Republican area. That is also reflective in the number of votes that you have. Wesley Hunt is the winner with 34,000, and then you have 18,3 and 2,000 beneath that. There is going to be a runoff between the 2 top people with the Democrats, 9,000 and 8,000 respectively. So certainly it seems like it's going to be Mr. Hunt's race to lose. And if you're interested, maybe we don't necessarily need to do this right now, but it wouldn't be a bad idea at some point to get a little bit familiar with the personalities within the Texas Senate and the Texas House. I guess for our purposes here, the interesting thing would be who is going to replace Larry Taylor. We're in Senate District 11 right here, and a representative from Galveston, that area, in the Texas House, 23, is the nominee of the Republican Party with 56% of the vote, Mays Middleton, and a reflection of the fact that it's drawn to represent, to be won by a Republican. There's no Democrat running on the other side.
Which district is this?
This is District 11. There's a little bit of District 17 also in Brazoria County, and Joan Huffman, who's been around for a while. She's a little bit of the power player in the Texas Senate. And if we're also interested, if we want to scroll down to the most relevant, I guess, of the House races, 150 House races for us here, our representative, Ed Thompson. I was earlier today, I kept saying Fred Thompson. That's somebody else. Texas House District 29. Not completely redrawn, but he did not have an opponent in the Republican primary. He won with 100% of the vote, and he doesn't have an opponent for the Democratic primary either. So he can already make plans for being in Austin in January. And there's quite a few districts that are like that. I haven't tallied these things up for purposes of my classes, but I will at some point. So that is what we have statewide. Now, if you want to, we can click over and look at and you can get all of these things, of course, by going, if you just Google Brazoria County elections, it'll take you to the elections page in Brazoria County. Remember, they're the ones that ran all this stuff for us locally. And yeah, again, if you decided that you wanted to vote, you go to a polling place, and one arrow will say go over here to vote with the Democrats, go over here to vote with the Republicans, and these are the results from the county. Have you found them yet? You want to run
Which
through
one?
these?
Which district are we looking at?
Well, this isn't a district. This is the primary election results for the entirety of Brazoria County.
Okay, let's see.
What I can, while you're looking, if you look at this thing, it'll mention on the top right. There's a little gray box. It says it's unofficial results.
Unofficial results.
Yeah, and it has registered voters. The percentage of registered voters in this case, what I'm looking at here is the Democrats that showed up to vote. 11,000 vote in the Democratic primary. 11,387 out of 228,477, which is 4.98% of registered voters, which is pretty typical for turnout in the Democratic primary. And if you scroll through this, when I was doing this with my classes earlier, we weren't spending a lot of time talking about the U.S. representatives or the governor's races. This is where you would get the results for the Court of Appeals races, also the district judges. And remember, we elect our judges in the state of Texas, so that's what makes that important. We're in the 1st and the 14th Courts of Appeals, and so you can see the individuals who have been elected there.
Let me come back really quick to the registered voters, the unofficial results. So Republican, under the Republican tab, we see registered voters. So that's 13.5%. So that was the turnout of Republicans.
Look,
right?
yeah, look on the other side of the equal side. I mean, you see the same number of total registered voters in Brazoria County, 228,477. Of those, 30,924 opted to vote in the Republican primary. And again, either one of the days during the 2-week early voting period or on Tuesday. So 13.53% of all registered voters in Brazoria County chose to go participate in the Republican primary, and what was it, 13,000 or so did it for the Democrats.
Interesting.
So
So
when-
Democrats, so much lower turnout.
Yes, and this is not unusual.
But interesting that their total registered voters is almost the same
Well,
size
it is the
as
same.
Republican.
No, you're talking about the same pool of people.
Oh.
These are all the registered voters in Brazoria County. And of those, the 30,000 or so
who chose to vote
who chose
in the
to-
Democratic or Republican primary.
Well, though, in a total of, what is it? You know, there's 11,300 and 30,000, so 43,000 total people voted in the primaries. That's your overall turnout, and 30,000 voted with the Republicans. The rest voted with the Democrats.
So the overall turnout, both parties, was a little less than 20%. Is that right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
okay.
yes, exactly.
Now, how does that compare to normal? Is that below average?
That
or-
is, I think that is slightly below average, but not tremendously below average. I believe the last 2 elections, you had a lot of turnout because of a lot of the controversy associated with President Trump's presidency. There was a lot of turnout was actually huge in 2008, which of course was the first presidential election following the housing bubble crash, Obama's election. So this is lower than some of those, but maybe because, you know, warts and all, things are a little bit less in upheaval than perhaps they were back then, of course, which is weird to say considering everything that's happening currently.
Okay, so
Well, what I've been doing with my classes, by the way, with these is a way to run through the county-wide races, and again, looking at some of the people that are running for the judicial positions. These are the people. You know, if you go down to Angleton, you go to the county courthouse. This is where their offices happen to be. You know, so we elected individuals to compete to be the judge for the 149th Judicial District, 239th Judicial District, 300th, 412th. That's what we get in Brazoria County. There's about 60 of those things up in Harris County because there's so many more people that are up there. So anyway, so if you, the results for the county positions as well too, county court at law and whatnot. A lot of these that were contested, you're going to see runoffs too. So, you know, it's going to be quite, there's a lot, there will be a lot for us to discuss when the runoffs are coming up, because unless something was unopposed, it looks like we're heading to runoffs with most of these other races. Now, what really popped out to me, if you'd like to discuss this, and again, I'm looking at, I'm scrolling down, Justice of the Peace, Conservation and Reclamation District, the Republicans running for that. And it doesn't, a lot of these, and this is also a reflection of the fact that you have so many more Republicans in Brazoria County than Democrats. You have more Republicans running for positions in Brazoria County than you have Democrats. So one of the reasons why, you know, turnout might have been so low in the Democratic primary was that there are fewer Democrats around here. And it's also worth pointing out too, before I get to the propositions, because that's one of the things I wanted to mention, what you get to do if you show up to vote in one of the party primary elections is you get to vote for party officials. And the two that you have the possibility of voting for, county chair is always there, the person that runs the county between elections. And if there is competition for a precinct chair that you happen to live in, then that will be on the ballot as well too. Generally, those are unopposed. It's like, some individual that's been, precinct chair for 20 years, and everybody decides to just go ahead and let them continue to organize the party affairs at that level. Now,
do you want to go to the proposition?
Let's do that, and that could be
wrap it up.
Yeah, go on ahead.
Oh no, yeah, go ahead. All right, let's go to the proposition.
If we remember from those, and I don't have the terminology in front of me, most of these are social issues, transgender, things like that. Things that Republicans generally rally around, but I thought it was surprising that within Brazoria County, only 79%. In other words, you have 93% in favor of Proposition 1, 89% Proposition. Most of these were like in the 90s.
Do we have a key to what these things are?
Well, actually, here, let me go ahead and do that. If we go back to
producer fail. Sorry, guys.
If we go back to the sample ballots, I'll do that right here and open those up.
Or we can try to guess. That would be a fun game.
Yeah, 92%.
What's a 92%? 93 something. That
Hank Williams is better than Garth Brooks.
Ooh, there's a 95, Proposition 7.
Which is Proposition? So here, let me tell that to you. That is, I think that was the high vote getter. Texas should protect the integrity of our elections by verifying that registered voters.
Which one is that? Proposition
7. That's what you
Proposition 7. Okay, so
Texas should protect the integrity of our elections by verifying that registered voters are American citizens, restoring felony penalties, and enacting I'm not done. Civil penalties for vote fraud and fighting any federal takeover of state elections. That appears to be the one that was most popular. Now, the one that was the least popular, and again, it still had close to 80% support, but considering that this is that small group of individuals that you would figure would be most vociferously in favor of this would be the high water mark, meaning that maybe the party doesn't consider completely focusing on this at this point. Maybe they do at some point, but this is the one that the voters, Republican voters, were asked, yes or no, Texas should eliminate all property taxes within 10 years without implementing a state income tax. And I'm supposing that the 20%, I think statewide, by the way, it was something like 25% that said no.
Wow. Why?
Well, all we can do is kind of reason through this. Property taxes are a key vehicle for funding local governments, community colleges. Alvin Community College collects a property tax. Alvin Independent School District, counties, cities, all of these things collect those, and it's a major source of its revenue. And you would have to make that up. Where would you, find the extra revenue? Would you increase sales taxes? So I think that might have been part of the issue. I could dig in a little bit deeper and try to see what sorts of internal, debates existed within the party.
I think maybe just voters realize that, the money has to come from somewhere. You can't just tell them we're going to magically make taxes disappear and then.
And it's a matter of where you're getting it, So now one consequence, and I think we may have mentioned this sort of thing before. The current Texas legislature has been doing an awful lot to try to increase their control over local governments, and one of the best ways you can increase control over anything is to have control over the purse strings. So I think that is part of what's going on with this too. If the state is completely in charge of funding for schools, for example, then there's no local control. over schools. The other two that seemed to get the highest number of no votes were Propositions 5 and 6. And 5 is a little bit of surprise. It's a pro-life issue, but involving not law, statutory law, involving changes in the Constitution. So the question, yes or no, was, Texas should enact a state constitutional amendment to defend the sanctity of innocent human life created in the image of God from fertilization until natural death, which is a fancy way to put the pro-life position out there, but put it in the Constitution, which is a much more difficult thing to change. It requires 2/3 vote in the House and the Senate, simple majority vote on the part of the general population, and it might be a difficult thing to, in fact, actually put in the Constitution. In fact, if the 2/3 requirement would make it probably impossible, assuming all Democrats would vote against this. But that doesn't seem to be as popular as some of the other ones. And the other one's a surprise, too. And this is just let's say it's a procedure. It's not even in the Constitution, but it is something that is within the laws, the rules of the House and the Senate. And it's a little bit of a relic of when Texas was a one-party Democratic state, and parties really didn't matter. So the presiding officer of the House, the presiding officer of the Senate, got to award positions in the different committees and also chairmanships to those different committees as well too. In addition to that, you could say which committees certain pieces of legislation went through, and the House, the Speaker of the House gets to do that for the House, and the Lieutenant Governor, who just discussed that race, gets to do that for the Texas Senate. So the issue here would be, and this is the question, and again, just to clarify, the Speaker can appoint whoever he wants. The Senator can appoint whoever he wants, as long as it's a member of the House and a member of the Senate. If a Republican Lieutenant Governor wants a Democrat in charge of something, then that happens. And this would attempt to end that process, or at least demonstrate that there's not much support for it. So yes or no to this question, the Republican-controlled Texas legislature should end the practice of awarding committee chairmanships to Democrats. And again, this had, what did we say? It was 16% no. And again, that's pretty high support, but not as much as some of the other issues that we saw. And, it'd be interesting. I'm sure that, in spirit, in principle, someone like Dan Patrick would probably be in favor of making sure, maximizing Republican control. But this would obviously limit his ability as lieutenant governor to do what he wants to do. And I would imagine that he would probably be opposed to this under that principle. Don't limit my power. Don't tell me what I can't do. So that's what, at least from our perspective right here, what happened Tuesday, what happened the 2 weeks before that.
All right. So before we go, let me offer one website of my own, but I have a question for you.
Sure.
Imagine I have a contract, and it says, if you hold this contract, you will win $100 if Beto O'Rourke becomes Texas governor in the upcoming gubernatorial election. Right? Imagine that. How much would you pay for that?
I'm trying to think of the logic right here. So what am I encouraged to do? If I offer $150,
well, it only pays $100.
But that's what I'm saying.
It'll pay $100 if Beto wins.
Yeah.
And then you have an option of buying it from me.
But I'm just saying, if I wanted to make sure, I don't know. I mean, you're asking about his competitiveness. It's going to be competitive. We saw the numbers; they're very close. I think. So if I say $90, I would offer you $90 for that. That means that I make $10.
If Beto wins.
If Beto wins.
I mean, okay. Wow. I'm tempted to write up such a contract right now.
I don't.
Because there is a website
Yeah.
where it is called predictit.org.
Yeah.
Where people bet on
Political betting
political
tools.
output,
Yeah.
except it's $1. They're $1
Yeah.
contracts, and then you get to pay money to
Yeah.
buy a potential payoff. So there's the Beto O'Rourke contract that if he wins, you win $1.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the site, it is market value right now is going for 9 cents. So
That's about what 9 cents. 9 cents.
9 cents.
Okay.
So you pay
Yeah.
9 cents on the off chance he wins. I
You
mean,
get-
clearly.
then you get a dollar.
Then you
Yeah.
get a dollar. Greg Abbott is going for 91 cents. So
Yeah.
that shows a high level of confidence. I mean, if you're willing to pay that much to win
Sure.
$1.
Sure.
And according to economic theory is that these cent amounts are supposed to correspond to the probability that you
Yes.
think that event will happen.
I'm familiar with those things, and they're supposed to be pretty accurate. Now they change a bunch too. You know, I mean, what I'm thinking is that Beto is he's an attractive candidate. He's run well. The numbers have been pretty good recently, and you've got this fact that Abbott's running for a third term. I think some people might get a little tired of him, and he has also been playing off to the right. And I'm not sure if that means that you have some folks that are moderate, let's say center-right individuals, that might be tempted to vote Beto. But we'll follow that. I mean, I think he's probably a little bit more competitive than those individuals. Now, I didn't say, dollar for dollar, so I don't think I would be betting too much on him. I would think right now it's probably likely, considering it's Texas, that Abbott gets reelected. But if I was advising Abbott, I wouldn't count on it. I wouldn't just I wouldn't sleep on this race.
And last one, if you really want to gamble it up, you can put a cent down on Matthew McConaughey and hope to increase to make 99-cent profit.
Yeah, he ended up, not competing for either of the parties. I wonder if he's going to want to put out his name as a write-in or independent candidate or whatnot. And remember too that we have the Green Party and the Libertarian Party. They're going to have their conventions coming up in this summer, and so we will have their candidates. And the issue for them is whether or not they're going to be able to get their candidates on the ballot.
All right. So a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline. So that was the Texas primary results, and we are out of here. Bye-bye.
See ya.